I was halfway through rehearsing what they called the biggest pitch of my life, the one they hinted might land me the VP title, when the damn coffee machine sputtered dry again. That was the third time that week. I stood there holding the empty pot like a moron, looking around at the kitchen that somehow still didn't have a working drawer. In 6 years building the entire B2B sales infrastructure from scratch, and I was still the guy replacing oat milk and tightening screws. That should have told me everything. Quick note: before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. My name's Aaron. I'm 37. I live in Chicago, and I'd been grinding at that tech startup since it was 6 people in a dream, back when our CRM was an Excel doc and I did sales calls from my car. I made the back-end work, brought in big clients, and mentored half the team, including Kyle, the cocky Ivy League golden boy they stuck me with last year because he looked good on investor calls. He talked in phrases like move the needle and agile mindset, but couldn't close a basic procurement deal if his life depended on it. He once called an RFP that PDF thing. I taught him how to write client emails that didn't sound like AI-generated clickbait. I taught him to listen, follow up, and not call VPs bro. And still, I watched leadership fawn over him like he'd invented software sales. He's got the look, they'd say. Really energizes a room. Whatever the hell that meant. Meanwhile, I was the one actually delivering revenue. I made quota 12 quarters in a row. Clean deals, clean handoffs, long-term clients who texted me when their kids were sick or their procurement systems crashed. And every time I asked about the promotion, it was the same. Just hang in there, Aaron. You've got the real substance that morning, though. Something was off. I don't know how to explain it. Sky was weirdly clear. My blazer actually fit right for once. The office was too quiet, like that eerie calm before a tornado touches down. My stomach knew it before my brain did. Then I saw the calendar update. Emergency department stand-up. Everyone shuffled in. VP walked in with that tight smile. And then he said it. Kyle's stepping into the VP role starting next quarter. It's a strategic shift. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just looked at Kyle, who was already grinning like he'd won prom king. Like he hadn't spent the last 9 months reading my decks and nodding like he understood them. Let them think I was blindsided. I wasn't. I'd been building something they didn't even see coming. Right after the announcement, the VP pulled me into one of those tiny glass-walled focus pods that look like confessionals for people with standing desks. He sat across from me, leaning forward like we were about to share a secret. Aaron, he said, I just want to make sure this shift makes sense from your perspective. This is really about optics, you know? Kyle brings a forward-facing energy, youth, momentum. He actually said fresh leadership narrative. Like, that was a real phrase and not something he ripped off a TED Talk. I didn't say a word, just nodded like I understood. Then Kyle walked in without knocking, holding a protein shake and grinning like a kid who found out Santa was real. What's up, Jedi Master? He said, plopping down next to me. So, listen, I'd love for you to onboard me to all the legacy pipeline stuff. You know, the deep cuts, old client contracts, vendor integrations, renewals. Just dump it all into a Notion board or something. I turned to him, smiled real slow. Of course, I said. And right there, something shifted in my chest. It wasn't anger, it was quieter than that. Like a door clicking shut from the inside. I'd taught this clown how to email a client without sounding like a YouTube ad. Walked him through margin strategy like I was explaining math to a Labrador. And now he was sitting in my seat like he'd earned it. Wearing the title like a borrowed tux he didn't even know how to dry clean. He sipped his shake and gave the VP a little nod like we were all teammates now. I looked at them and thought, you're proud of this? This is your big move? The VP stood up like the meeting was over. Let's give this some room to evolve, he said. I know you're a team player. Sure, I said. I'll make sure Kyle has what he needs. I walked out with them, gave Kyle a pat on the back like I was passing the torch. But my mind was already moving, mapping out systems, contacts, contracts, figuring out where the anchors were buried, who depended on me and didn't even realize it. Back at my desk, I opened a clean notes file, titled it Exit Strategy. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while my wife scrolled through Zillow listings. She asked if I was okay. I said, Yeah, just tired. But in my head, I was running through every client birthday I'd remembered without thinking, every email chain I'd kept alive through sheer consistency, every account I'd saved with one last-minute fix. They thought they could take the face and keep the function. Thought I'd hand over 6 years of trust and sweat like it was a hand-me-down sweater. I wasn't going to yell or flip a desk. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was just going to walk them off the map. I came in early the next morning and acted like nothing happened. For 2 weeks, I played the loyal soldier, sat through meetings nodding like a bobblehead while Kyle threw buzzwords at confused clients. I rewrote his follow-ups, rebuilt his pitch decks, and even cleaned up his spelling in internal memos so he didn't look like a toddler with a keyboard. He kept calling me a legend, said things like, "Dude, I'd be dead without you." I just smiled and kept feeding him rope. Behind the scenes, I was backing up everything. I mean everything. Decks, contracts, historical pricing models, margin analysis docs going back 5 fiscal years. I exported reports no one knew how to generate, saved copies to an encrypted drive that lived on my personal cloud. Quiet, clean, untouched by the company's shared folders. I wasn't rushing, I wasn't sloppy, I was surgical. Next, I pulled up my NDA, signed in 2017. I read every word. At first glance, airtight. Pages of boilerplate about proprietary data, non-competes, non-solicits. But buried in Clause 7, right after the legal fluff about employment scope, was the crack. All restrictions only applied during active employment, not a day after. That was my in. So I started scrubbing. I replaced my initials on proposal drafts, updated version histories so it looked like Kyle had made the final changes. I changed ownership on key folders to generic team accounts. On paper, I was just helping delegate. Then I changed file permissions. Quiet little moves, making sure I had access, but they didn't know where the originals were stored. If anyone asked, I'd say I was streamlining the back end. No one ever asked. I was dependable, boring, the guy who fixed systems and never complained about late meetings or bad coffee. They didn't realize the entire infrastructure still ran through me. They were too busy teaching Kyle how to use calendar filters. That's when I started the outreach, just light, personal check-ins to our top-tier clients, from my personal number, of course. Oh, hey, just wanted to make sure everything's running smooth with the Q3 rollout. Let me know if you hit any snags. Happy to jump in if needed. Nothing aggressive, no pitch, just warm, steady presence. Every single one responded. Oh, thank God, can't reach Kyle. Yeah, actually, there's a weird gap in the last proposal. Can we still loop you in? I made sure to keep things friendly, casual. I wasn't trying to poach, not yet. I just wanted them to remember who actually made their lives easier, who picked up the phone on Saturdays, who fixed the dashboard bugs before they became support tickets. One client even said, "Don't disappear on us, Aaron. You're the only adult in the room," I laughed, said I wasn't going anywhere. But in my head, I was already halfway gone. One night, around 11, I was scrolling through the CRM while pretending to QA Kyle's weekly forecast update, which was just a spreadsheet with colors and no math. That's when I saw it, my name, still listed as signatory on our 10 biggest accounts. No one had updated the record since my last title change. I sat back in my chair, stared at the screen, and smiled. They'd handed me the keys to the vault and forgot to lock the door. The next day I filed the first LLC, neutral name, no connection to me. Registered in Nevada through a third-party firm that specialized in silent entities. Within 3 days, I had a business account, a fake landing page, and an email domain. 2 days after that, I filed the second one. At this time, I handed control to Darren, one of the smartest analysts they laid off during last year's reorg. He jumped at the chance. I kept it simple. Each LLC would own a niche, one for logistics integration, one for dashboard optimization, one for legacy compliance consulting, which basically just meant fixing Kyle's sloppy client handoffs. Then the real test came. A legacy client in Dallas reached out confused. Kyle had been throwing around phrases like compliance synergy and regulatory fluidity, which, shockingly, meant nothing. He'd also missed a deadline. Their VP of Ops called me directly. Aaron, what's going on? This kid told us the invoice delay was a transition strategy. We're in a regulated space. We don't do transitions. I didn't flinch. I told him we were experimenting with a new external vendor structure, and I'd be happy to introduce a boutique partner we were collaborating with to help smooth things out. He agreed instantly. 30 minutes later, I forwarded the client to one of my LLC emails. We ran a quick audit, fixed the issue, and sent over a retainer agreement. 10 grand. Wired clean. Company didn't even blink. Next week, a different client, an old government contract, pinged me, annoyed. Kyle had sent over a 3-page PDF labeled Solution Narrative with a stock photo of a mountain on the cover. They didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I told them I could loop in a more hands-on vendor with experience handling government protocols. Another LLC, another fake intro, another retainer, 10 days. 2 accounts, 20 grand. The best part? On paper, everything looked legit. We weren't stealing clients. We were supporting accounts through external collaboration. No one asked why the boutique vendors used language that sounded exactly like mine. No one noticed the formatting was identical to our old pitch decks. No one looked twice because Kyle was too busy getting applause for repeating my Q4 projections like he thought of them himself. They had their shiny face at the table. Meanwhile, I was quietly draining the pool behind the scenes. The next move had to be clean. No Slack messages, no email chains, no trace. I picked a cafe in Lincoln Park. No company cards accepted, no laptops out. Just coffee, sunlight, and Ava, VP of strategy for one of our flagship accounts. The kind of client we built entire quarters around. She showed up 5 minutes early, just like always. Designer coat, clean ponytail, sharp eyes. We shook hands like old friends, sat down, and skipped the small talk. The contract was already signed, dated, done. I handed her a clean packet with a custom onboarding plan and vendor contact sheet. My LLC's logo sitting quiet at the bottom corner. She flipped through it once, folded the papers back into the folder, and took a slow bite of her croissant. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Honestly, surprised you didn't do this sooner." We didn't toast, we didn't smile. Just 2 professionals exchanging value with no middleman to dumb it down. 3 days later, I got a vague message from an old client. "Hey, we're reevaluating vendor alignment this quarter. Just checking in." That was code for, "We want out. Can you give us an alternative?" I forwarded them to one of the boutique vendors, my vendor. They sent back a 1-line reply. "This is exactly what we've been looking for." Kyle saw the shift and replied with a thumbs up emoji. That's when I knew he had no idea what was actually happening. He thought it was normal churn. Market shifts. Maybe Q3 jitters. I let him flail. In meetings, I covered for his missed metrics with just enough detail to keep the execs calm. When he bumbled through account reviews, I slid him a note with the right numbers. I even offered to handle some of the back-end noise so he could stay strategic. He bought it. Meanwhile, I was rerouting everything. I set filters on the shared inboxes, so any message with phrases like renewal, contract, pilot, or retainer skipped Kyle's view and landed in a private folder I monitored alone. I flagged those emails, replied personally. Clean, polite, always on behalf of the team. Internally, I buried him in low-value updates and status reports. Let him obsess over slide formatting and branding refreshes. I removed him from 3 client Slack channels with a simple message: reducing noise for Kyle's bandwidth. Nobody questioned it, because they still saw me as the guy who handled the chaos, the fixer, the guy who knew too much but made their lives easier. By the time Kyle noticed things were quieter, it was already too late. Clients weren't responding. Pipeline reports started showing stalled or unresponsive. Renewal dates passed with no signatures. He tried nudging procurement, tried resending intro decks. Silence. I hadn't cut the wires. I'd just pulled out the screws holding up the scaffolding. All he had left was a shell. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Calendar alert popped up like clockwork. All hands Zoom. Leadership evolution and exciting wins. Corporate theater at its finest. I logged in with my camera off and microphone muted. Just another silent face in the gallery view. The VP kicked it off with his usual word salad. Transformation, agility, growth phase, blah, blah, blah. Kyle sat front and center, lit like he was broadcasting from a ring light factory, grinning like a kid who won a cereal box sweepstakes. When it got to his turn, he leaned in all confident. "This quarter's been about transformation," he said, voice syrupy. And honestly, I couldn't have done it without incredible mentorship. He looked straight at me like I was a prop, like I was supposed to smile and nod. I muted the call, opened Gmail, and typed my resignation. 2 weeks' notice. No drama, no bitterness, just plain sterile language that legal couldn't twist into a liability. Effective October 1st, I'll be stepping away from my role at the company. I'm grateful for the experience and wish the team continued success. I hit send, logged off the Zoom. By Tuesday, the cracks were already showing. Kyle's inbox had gone cold. No replies from Ava, no rescheduled calls from procurement leads. 2 invites bounced outright. He forwarded one to the VP with a question mark and got no reply. They didn't know I'd built in quiet fail-safes. Gmail filters redirecting high-tier communications to private aliases. Contract clauses tying account management to named individuals. Me. Vendor agreements that required previous lead continuity or the deal reset. Everything looked fine on paper, but under the hood, the pipeline was bleeding out. Wednesday, I watched Kyle scramble in the sales channel. Anyone know why the Davison renewal is stuck? Has anyone heard from Springwell this week? Who owns the NYSE vertical now? No one had answers, because I was the answers, and I wasn't answering. By Thursday, the VP pinged me. "Quick chat before your exit?" I didn't reply. I was on my patio with a glass of Pinot and my phone face down. September air crisp, inbox quiet. I didn't owe them anything. I gave them 6 years. They gave my seat to a mascot. Kyle tried calling that night. Twice. I let it ring. He sent a text. "Hey, can you at least loop me in on what's happening with Ava's team? We're in full blackout over here." Blackout was right. He thought it was a technical glitch. Really, it was just account after account going silent. Friday morning, I got a call from Sarah, the junior OPS girl I used to mentor back when she was fresh out of college and terrified of Excel. She didn't say hi. She whispered, "They're freaking out. Like, full-on panic mode. Legal's rereading your exit email." Line by line, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling fan. "Interesting," I said. She lowered her voice even more. "Kyle deleted a Slack message yesterday. Asked if you still needed to be CC'd on contract threads. It was up for like 20 seconds. He thought that'd erase it. I already had the screenshot, timestamp, channel log, quiet ammo. I didn't tell her that though. I just said, appreciate the heads up, and hung up. By the end of the day, their entire deal desk was on fire. Clients had gone dark. CRM entries flipped to inactive, like someone pulled a plug. Projections for quarter 2, once a smugly confident green, were now full of red slashes and TBD tags. No one could reach Ava. Springwell ghosted completely. The NYSE lead emailed back, but only to say, "We've moved in a different direction." Kyle posted in 3 Slack channels asking who had backup access to the renewal deckmaster. No one replied. The VP messaged me once. "Any context for this shift in client engagement?" I didn't even open it. Then around 6 p.m., my personal phone buzzed. Number I didn't recognize. It was the CEO. "Hey Aaron, sorry to reach out like this. Just wanted to ask, why'd you resign so suddenly? There's a lot of noise right now." I waited 2 seconds. 3. Then I replied with 3 words. Check the pipeline. Didn't wait for a response. By Saturday morning, word had leaked. Some consultant on an industry forum posted about a quiet but fast client shift in the B2B SaaS space. 3 major clients had pulled contracts and moved to a new boutique firm with a strong back-end track record. No names, just hints. Procurement flags, tech stack overlaps. People noticed. Someone found the landing page. Then they found the team page. There I was, front and center. Next to Darren and Maddie, the 2 people they laid off last year to trim overhead. Kyle must have seen it around midnight. He sent a direct message to Darren's LinkedIn. What is this? Are you poaching clients? Darren didn't answer. I checked the traffic dashboard Sunday morning. Site views up 300%, inquiries rolling in, a few even from competitors. By Monday, my inbox had 2 messages from former colleagues asking if we were hiring. The company had spent 6 years building a structure that only worked with me, quietly holding it together. Now, they were standing in the wreckage, wondering when it started falling. It started the moment they mistook presence for replaceability. Kyle got reassigned to strategic initiatives, which, in corporate speak, means somewhere far away from the real work. No team, no budget, no relevance, just a calendar full of fake meetings and a title that sounded important if you didn't ask follow-up questions. The VP didn't last much longer. They called it early retirement, gave him a nice LinkedIn send-off. But everyone inside knew he was walked out with a signed NDA and a padded check. Quiet exit for a loud mistake. Then the rest started falling. Clients pulled out. One by one, contracts lapsed. Forecasts went from aggressive to under revision. Investors started poking around. The company's valuation dipped hard. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to kill the momentum they'd been bragging about all year. And Kyle? The buzz around him vanished. All that fresh energy and forward-facing leadership faded once there were no metrics to hide behind. The meetings stopped. The speaking invites dried up. His name didn't come up anymore. They stopped looping him into anything that mattered. I watched the whole thing from my balcony. Ocean view, quiet, clean, mine. The coffee mug in my hand still had the old company logo on it, cheap ceramic, faded lettering. But I kept it around for mornings like this. A reminder. On the table next to me sat a gift basket. Expensive stuff. Real chocolate, boutique teas, handwritten note. From Ava. Said something like, "Here's to doing it your way." I never posted about the company, never told my side, never explained what happened to anyone who wasn't in the room when it started. There was nothing to explain. Kyle was forgotten. The VP, too. Just footnotes in a QBR that got pushed to next year. But in their books, buried in the finance reports, under the drop in quarterly retention, you could still see it. The missing revenue, the clients who left quietly, the value that didn't vanish, it just moved. I didn't break anything. I just took back what I built, shifted it somewhere it'd be recognized, protected, paid. Some pipelines burst. Mine flowed exactly where it was wanted. That's not sabotage. That's succession.